Friends, welcome to this live where we are going to be talking about a movement that is ongoing in Bastar right now in Chhattisgarh. And we'll be talking about the specific context in which that movement has started, and also talking about what is the larger context in Bastar, why there has been a fraud situation there for a long time, and what needs to be done to get over it, how we should be in support of the movement which is ongoing right now. So Chhattisgarh and the Bastar area in Chhattisgarh is basically a forest area, and a large part of the population there is basically various kinds of Adivasi communities. And now, you know that in Bastar, there's a lot of militarization. There's a lot of military presence there, so paramilitary presence, CRPF camps all over. And no village basically likes to have a CRPF camp very close to it, because wherever there are CRPF camps, there have been known to be clashes with local people, clashes meaning CRPF people basically preying on local young girls or women, as well as instances of random violence and intimidation and so on. So generally, no one wants to live with a military or a paramilitary camp very close to them. That is perfectly understandable. And what happened is that on the 12th of May, just last month, uh, in the middle of the night, a CRPF camp came up near the Silger village. So this in itself is suspicious, because obviously the villagers thought that if a CRPF camp is coming up, why were we not consulted? Why were we not told about it? Our Gram Sabha has not been consulted. Our Gram Sabha has not given consent. Under the law, especially under the PESA law, the Panchayat PESA law, basically Adivasi villages, the Gram Sabha's decision is absolutely important for any decision to be made vis-a-vis that village. But no Gram Sabha consent was even sought. And on top of that, why are you making this in the middle of the night? Why is a camp coming up in the middle of the night? Naturally, that is suspicious. Naturally, that seems to be furtive. Naturally, that seems to have some kind of hidden motive, which means you are deliberate. You know that there'll be opposition to it, and you're doing it in the middle of the night. So naturally, people protested. And the very next day that the protest was held, there was a lathi charge, and 24 people were injured. And then the day after that, there were around 12,000 people who protested, who came from around 5 of the Gram Panchayats nearby, and they protested. And again, there was a lot of, lathi charge on them and all of that. You can see the strength of the gathering over there. Huge gatherings, huge protests were happening. But no one was coming and talking to them. No one was removing the camp. No one was coming even to negotiate, even to talk and find out what are the objections, and so on. So none of that happened. So the movement gained momentum between 14th and 16th of May, and around 16th, on 17th of May, again there were violence. When there was violence on part of the police, so tear gassing was done and all of that. So naturally, after such a long movement, there were some elements in the protest who were getting a little impatient. So some of them picked up some bits of gravel lying on the ground and all, and threw towards the CRPF camp. But obviously, like, these are not weapons or anything, and no one was injured, right? And yet that was enough to cause the police to fire on them, and fire on absolutely unarmed protesters who did not have any arms or ammunition with them. And 3 people were killed. This included Kavasi Vaga, Ursam Bhima, and a child, 16, 17-year-old boy, teenage boy called Uika Pandu. Okay. And now a 4th person has also died, who was injured on that day. She was a pregnant woman. So we've heard that she has also died. So these are 4 casualties, that means. Okay. Now you can see the picture of the road. So these roads that are being made, basically the CRPF camps come up to all along the roads to guard those roads. So to guard the road construction and all of that. And there'll be camps literally at every stone's throw. There'll be a camp. And the presence of these camps creates a lot of intimidation, a lot of sense of powerlessness, and fear among local people. And obviously that is understandable, because the continuous presence of a paramilitary force and a lot of police deployment and paramilitary deployment in your area does not make for a peace. It does not make for democracy. Naturally, any armed force like that is deployed in a civilian area, they tend to be from regiments like the Naga regiment, regiments from Manipur, regiments from maybe Bihar or UP. And so they are not Bastar's people, right? So they don't speak the same language. They tend to look upon the Adivasis of Bastar as being subhuman, not really equals and all of that. And this is not just true of Bastar and the police there and the CRPF there. This is true all over the world or wherever armies are deployed among civilian populations. Generally, that is the way in which armed forces tend to behave towards civilian populations where they are posted and where they are confronting some kind of other insurgency or whatever it is. The tendency is to be afraid of and to feel a hatred as well as fear of all the local people, because you're assuming that there is no difference between the insurgency and all the local people. Because the local people obviously don't think very well of you. They don't welcome you because you behave badly with them, and you are a repressive force over there. So this kind of violence also keeps happening on part of the armed forces towards the Adivasis. And so this time what happened was that 17th of May, this happened. And after that, the protests again went on. On 22nd of May, one young man, he went out to sell mangoes or something like that. And he also was shot dead, completely unprovoked. He was shot dead by CRPF. He has been killed. So this movement has now grown in momentum. It's very large. There are large numbers of people who have marched. They have carried, thousands of people have carried small pieces of, rocks in their hand, carried them to the spot where the thing happened, where the killings happened, and they have constructed a memorial for those who have been killed. Okay. So, in spite of this, why is the government of Chhattisgarh not intervening? Why is it not going to talk to the people over there? Why not call a meeting of all the Gram Panchayat heads as well as human rights activists who know the area well, who know the issues well? And why not ensure that the people of that area can live with dignity and live without fearing for their children being killed, their people being killed, their women being raped, and so on? Why can't you do that? And why assume that their demand is something of an unreasonable one? If it is a Delhi colony and you had CRPF stationed all around a Delhi colony, checking on each person as you come and go, you would obviously think it is outrageous. You would not think, oh, yes, it's very good, I'll subject myself to this for years on end. You would not do that. You would start thinking that this is absolutely too much, right? And this is so. Why should it be different for a colony? Why should it be different for the people of Bastar, Chhattisgarh, who have been facing this kind of violence for so long? And so the government of Chhattisgarh is now a Congress government. When there was a BJP government there, also the situation was even worse than this. And before that, also when there was a Congress regime before the BJP one, then also the situation was very bad. So when this new Congress government was elected, when Bhupesh Baghel became chief minister, there was obviously the Adivasi population had also voted for him in large numbers, voted for the Congress in large numbers, because they hoped for some kind of change. They hoped for this situation to ease up, to change. But it has maybe eased up very, very, very little in terms of some optics. But actually, you can see that the basic structure of what is happening there, the repressive situation there, that has not changed. And what is happening there is it's continuing this kind of repression of the people and complete sort of suppression of democracy over there. Now that there is a movement happening there, I think we all need to raise our voices in support of this movement and demand that the government of Chhattisgarh basically intervene. The chief minister himself should go. He should apologize for these firings. He should ensure that those who have fired on unarmed people, that they are punished, that they lose their jobs as police officers or CRPF people. And he should make sure that people of the area, they want demilitarization there. They don't want this kind of paramilitary presence there. That should be ensured. And don't say in answer that, oh, but the Maoists are there. See, the point is that the Maoist actions in that area, I would say that they also contribute to the situation in the sense that when those actions happen, the persons doing them have fairly sophisticated, equipment and so on to cause these blasts and so on, right? But the point is that, so a relatively small squad of people is doing that. But the ordinary people living all around, they are forced to bear the consequences of the raids that happen, of the repression that happens. And then the job of building a powerful movement against this, say building on this kind of movement that is ongoing now, that also is deterred by the Maoist presence. We don't think that this kind of issues here can be settled just by some kind of military confrontation at all. Rather, this movement that is ongoing, where it's a mass movement raising these issues, raising issues of dignity of people and justice in that area, I think those are the issues that we should all find ourselves backing. And we should tell people, tell the government, you can't use the Maoists as an excuse to start, to continue to randomly kill unarmed persons and claim that they are Maoists. And these are not isolated incidents. If you search, you will find any number of instances of rape of Adivasi women by tribal by CRPF forces. There is an incident from some years ago when a young teenage girl was gang raped and killed by armed forces over there. And then when she was killed, they claimed that she was a Maoist and they shot her because in an encounter. But subsequently, a judicial inquiry found that that was false, that there had been a gang rape by armed forces over there, and then they had killed this girl. And in spite of that, those responsible for that gang rape and killing have not yet been charged, have not yet been punished. There has been no trial held, none of that. So there are many instances of this kind. And when we went to Bastar in 2000, I think it was 15 or 16, you can see the report. It is on the CPIML website as well as on the AIPF website in Hindi and English. Bastar, where the constitution stands suspended. There you can see that we have also described this situation where every few minutes there is a CRPF checkpost, and they stop you and they search you and they touch you and all of that. So you imagine what that is like for the local people, because they are feeling literally like Palestinians living in Israel or something, right? Because they are continuously surrounded. It is an apartheid kind of feeling. It is a feeling of sort of racial discrimination. You talk to the CRPF locals and they will tell you, oh, Adivasis, they don't really know any language. They are not intelligent. And if their children are to study, then it's a good thing that they're being picked up, separated from their parents and put into these other schools where they will learn a totally different culture and be cut off from their own Adivasi culture and language and so on. So these show you the kind of racial biases that are also operating here. And there is no attempt to seriously change that. We had followed up during that fact-finding report on certain kinds of incidents that we had read about in news reports of fake encounters. For instance, in one village, we had read that there was a fake encounter in which two Maoist women were shot dead. They were wearing saris, they tripped and they fell into a ditch and they were shot dead. Immediately, we got suspicious because we thought that if they were Maoist women, why were they wearing saris? If they had tripped on their saris and fallen in a ditch, why were they shot dead? It was, I'm sure, possible to shoot them in the leg or something like that and take them captive. Why were they killed? When our team actually reached that village, they were quite shocked to find that the two who had been killed were not women. They were two young little girls of age, I think 12 or 13, something like that, very young girls, and who had just gone to the early morning to have a bath in the river as they did every day. So their mother, their father who were remaining, they were so shocked, they didn't know what to say and do. There had been that's a very remote village. No FIR had been lodged. Till date, no FIR has been lodged. And there is never any justice. There were other instances where young teenage Adivasi boys had gone to have a bit of a drink in the afternoon in the forest. Something which young teenage boys, 19, 20-year-olds could do all over the world and certainly in our cities also. And likewise, they had done that with their local some fermented drink. They had gone to the forest. On their way back, they were coming back, and one boy wanted to go on his cycle and go to the nearby market to help his mother to bring the shopping back. So they were walking back, with the cycle. Then the CRPF came in front, and immediately they got scared, because when CRPF comes in front, people run, okay, because they're afraid immediately, because they're afraid of being killed. With reason, as on 22nd May, even this month, this man who went to sell mangoes, he was literally just shot because he was chased by CRPF. He started running and he was shot. So these boys also ran. and one of them was shot dead. One of them bore witness. He hid. He saw what was happening, but one boy was shot dead. The other boy was made to carry the body of this boy on his cycle all the way till the police station, where once he reached there, he also was shot dead. So these were young boys who had been shot dead, and these are just two incidents that I'm telling you. There are any number of such fake encounters you can read about. You can read about it in AIPF fact-finding report. You can search for more reports on the net. There have been some very good reports in the scroll for a long time, from Bastar. There have been some good reports in the Indian Express also. You can read about these and know. So why I'm saying all this is that basically the structure of violence there is not changing, even if the government has changed. And that is not good enough. We have to say very clearly that the Congress government there and the Congress leadership also must address this. It is not enough for them to say, oh, we stand for the constitution, but we also will suspend the constitution when it comes to Bastar, when it comes to any kind of armed deployment in any part, anywhere. Indian armed forces or paramilitary forces are being deployed in Bastar, being deployed in Kashmir, anywhere. That is not okay for them to behave like this towards the local people. So demilitarization in this area is an absolute must, and do not give the excuse of Maoist presence in order to justify this kind of military presence, because you know very well that it is in fact the CRP. The more the CRPF presence increases, the more you are increasing you are welcoming a confrontation, a continued armed kind of confrontation with Maoist forces over there, and that is not the way to go. If peace is the way ahead, then the first step must be to have justice and demilitarization, so that people are free to hold free democratic protests of the kind that we are seeing now, that they are able to do this without fearing that they will be shot dead, and let democratic movements be built around whatever issues there are to be building them. And so I wanted to say one thing that I said in the Hindi bit as well, that actually this whole attitude of armed forces towards the civilians, it's absolutely similar to the colonial armed forces, the British colonial armed forces, and their attitude towards the Indians when they were deployed in India. So if you look at the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, we wrote about it on our party website also. You can look for that, CPIML.net. If you type Jallianwala Bagh and CPIML.net, you'll get the story. So there we had found, we had read books which told us that basically the British people, British armed forces deployed in Punjab at that time were so fearful that another 1857 would be repeated. And all British forces used to be in that fear all the time. So fear and hatred. So they continuously thought that, because they knew that their presence there was not really legitimate, right? It was not welcome. It was not legitimate. They were an occupying army. And so every time that there would be the least kind of protest, unarmed protest, by people coming to hand over some petition, they fired on them, they killed people. So once people were killed, the anger grew and the protest grew, and then these people became more repressive. And then, of course, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, which has become an icon, an international symbol of the hatred, of colonial hatred and colonial violence. That is what happened. That happened. So the point is, why in independent India are we allowing these Jallianwala Baghs to continue happening in our country, in Bastar? Why are we allowing our Indian forces to behave like this towards the people of Kashmir, as well as towards Adivasi people in Bastar? This is not all right. This kind of military presence has to stop. And we should amplify the protests that are going on now in Bastar, find ways to support this movement, and find ways to support their demand that they do not want a CRPF camp near their village, and they want justice for the people who have been killed. The 4 people who have lost their lives, in fact 5 if you count the boy who was killed on 22nd of May, justice for all those people who have been arbitrarily killed. This should be something that we also demand, that we also amplify. And we will be coming back to you on this subject later also. We hope to have human rights activists who are on the ground over there visiting these places be able to speak to you about what they are seeing over there. We will try for that also, and make sure that we manage to get this to you.